r/AskReddit by Redmond ETS. Tradesmen, have women ever offered sex on the job, and why did you accept or decline? I delivered pizzas for a local mom and pop pizza shop more than 30 years ago. There was one house that would call in orders and the other drivers would openly argue over whose turn it was to deliver to this address. Being the new guy on the crew, I never got the chance, nor would they tell me what the deal was, so my imagination ran wild. Well, one day the stars aligned and I finally got the opportunity. To my disappointment, it turned out that the deal was that it was an older gentleman who lived alone and offered a $100 tip for you to watch stuff and beat it while he watched. TLDR, easiest $100 I ever made. Sold an old guy a phone at a store I worked at. He was talking about how he needed help at his house and asked me if I could help him. Me thinking he's an old man that probably needs help moving stuff, I asked what kind of help he needed. He then took a quick look around and said, "I'll give you $100 if you let me play with your dong a little bit." I declined. He raised his offer. I declined. I did call my girlfriend and let her know to change her attitude, cause I got options. And people are willing to pay. Had a roommate do renovation work on the side. Ended up doing a kitchen remodel for a single nurse. As he tells it, they talked and joked around a lot while he was working. Then one afternoon she commented on his tool belt and asked if he'd ever considered showing up only wearing the tool belt. He ended up staying there for 3 consecutive days pounding his hammer. They are happily married now with 4 kids. When I was a teenager, I was canvassing for a double glazing company. A woman opened the door in her dressing gown and kept making jokes about how she wasn't dressed. She asked if I wanted to wait inside while she changed. Confused, I declined and said I could come back later. She then said that it was really hot outside and told me that if I came in, she'd make me some fresh lemonade. I told her that I didn't want to inconvenience her and had work to do. She told me I could come back later if I got bored. When I met my colleagues at the end of the afternoon and told them the story, they explained what was actually going on. There was a guy at my last job who was offered sex on the job by a housewife during a repair. He accepted, thinking it would be an awesome experience. And it was, until she called the office later and said that they could either toss their invoice or she'd go to the cops and get a rape kit done. They knew he'd been blackmailed, but they were still out thousands of dollars and risked having their installer be publicly accused of rape, which would kill the business since it's home repair. So they threw away the invoice and fired him. Don't do it, guys. Not worth it. I'm a general contractor and had a government contract to rehab and take care of construction stuff in low-income apartments. I replaced a GC who was fired because his men kept on having relations with the residents in exchange for stuff. So I made a rule where my guys had to be in pairs whenever they entered an apartment. On the first day, 2 of my guys went into this lady's apartment to replace the front door because her old one was kicked in. She met them naked and offered to take them both on if they can also get her a new fridge. Not by themselves. I once had a bloke I did some work for offer me a go on his wife as payment. That's a no from me, pal. My invoice'll be in the post. HVAC tech here, mostly residential. I've def seen my fair share of the housewives who will leave doors open when they're changing. Only time I was ever propositioned was after I had done a repair. She was probably mid-50s but smoking hot. I wanted to since I had not gotten any in a while, but I knew it could go south too easily. Hard decision but the smartest. I delivered pizzas during COVID. I got an order from a familiar address, so I took it, and the woman answered the door topless. She paid for the food, and then invited me in and had sex with me on the couch. It was my wife. She ordered the food so I would deliver it and come have sex with her while I was working. I also got to have leftover pizza when I came home from work. Good day. A friend's mom called me once to do maintenance on her late husband's Harley Davidson. I realized it wasn't the Harley that needed a service when she opened the door nearly naked. I turned around and muttered something about coming back later, which I never did. Not my story, but a buddy of mine who was a self-employed welder. He would do calls mostly to ranches, barns, and other rural and livestock type, usually repairing gates, corrals, and equipment. Anyhow, he showed up one day at a stable for 4-H kids and was gonna fix some fencing for the paddock. The lady who ran the stables mentioned her husband was out of town picking up a horse they bought. Long story short, she invited him inside to cool off. This is 102-degree Texas weather, so anyone would naturally take the offer. She gave him a tall glass of tea, water, and some fruit to cool off while she went to change. Within a couple minutes she came down the stairs in just panties and asked if he wanted to take a nice cool shower. He told me it was really hard to say no, but he declined only because he had been cheated on before and never wanted another man to feel that pain. Edit. Since a couple people asked. 4-H is a program across the United States that helps kids and teenagers with development skills in science, agriculture, community outreach, and various other programs. In this case the 4-H club was agriculture. So they learn how to ride horses, care for them, feed them, brush them, etc. Only heard of it happening once. Worker was single and in really good shape. And the woman at the house was married with younger kids. Not sure how it happened, but he fell in love with her and ruined her marriage. He went crazy chasing her and she went back to her husband. Word on the street is that her husband ending up leaving her a year later and got to keep the kids, and she ended up paying child support and alimony to him after cheating. It was lose-lose all around. Oh, and the business the husband and wife were running together went under and their handful of employees consequently lost their jobs too. I worked at Papa John's in high school as a delivery driver. One of my deliveries was to a house where a bunch of middle-aged women were having a ladies' night. They flirted for a few minutes and made some pretty obvious jokes. Is pizza the only thing you deliver? Etc. Before I left, the hostess asked me to swing back by when I got off. Almost 20 years later and I'm still kicking myself for not going back. One time when I was younger, there was this girl who asked me if I wanted to take a shower before I left, and I was like, nah, I'm good. And she asked me 2 more times if I was sure I didn't want to take a shower, and I was so confused. I was like, nah, I have a shower at home. That's really nice of you though. And then 10 years later, out of nowhere, I was like, oh. I used to drive taxi. I'm a pretty good looking guy, even more so in my late 20s, and I was really fit. I drove nights, and the number of, usually drunk, women that offered me sex in lieu of paying their fare was staggering. The first time it happened, this bird offered to suck my dong instead of pay her fare. I was like, your fare is only $8. Lol. Not me, but an old acquaintance who owned a rough street gym. A ridiculously pretty girl trying desperately hard to be an influencer would get growth hormone from him for 2 BJs a week for 3 weeks. He'd typically book her in Monday and Friday. Both of them thought it was a reasonable trade and not in freaking sane. Pro tip. If offered and inclined, tell them you'll be back when you're off the clock. It ain't foolproof, but it helps. I've had a client form a crush on me and would get me out to different sites run by the organization for no real reason. Every time she was there and she always asked for me specifically. She told one of the ladies that worked in our office, and after that they started to send out other texts to fix her issues. The client's support call out requests dropped significantly after that. I did maintenance for a large college student housing complex for 5 years. I had a couple of instances. I like my wife and enjoy being married to her, so I would politely decline and then walk out. It's usually average looking girls that are lonely, kinda feel bad rejecting them. There was one though that's in the top 3 hottest ladies I have ever seen in person. It was genuinely hard to walk away from that one. I did get to chuckle though, thinking that's probably the only time she's ever faced rejection. Also, if this ever happens to you and you reject their advances, tell your supervisor about it immediately. Someone that did maintenance warned me about it, didn't think it was real. But the first girl I rejected came into the office 30 minutes later and said I tried to rape her. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more? Have a nice evening.